Alright, welcome back, Rudy's Resurrection followers. Today's episode is going to be dedicated to fabbing the rear cab mount / cross member for the build. This has been a part of the build that has kind of filled me with a bit of trepidation as far as getting this thing put together accurately, because there's little room for error, in my opinion, on getting this thing fabbed up and welded in. I did have a friend from Frame Swap Faction, Scrap to Art Metalworks, that shared his blueprint with me that I think he's posted on the Facebook page as well, of how he built his using some C-channel, and very impressive in how he laid out the schematic and did all his measurements and everything. And I was excited to receive that, but then I was disheartened when I determined that my cab mounts, as far as where the holes are for my rear cab mounts, are very different in a 62 than they are in a 65. So I was a bit foiled by that. So I'm going to have to kind of go back to the drawing board, and I dug deep and tapped into some of my high school geometry, and I've come up with a couple schematics here based on my measurements and my dimensions, and I've kind of worked out a couple plans. Plan A for a little taller mount, Plan B for a little bit lower mount, and so we're going to kind of see how that goes. Obviously, we're going to have to be pretty accurate in working out our clearance for the drive shaft to make sure that that's not any risk of impacting the rear cross member. But I'd like to kind of keep it down as low as I can, because I think everything else is going to fit better that way. Tying the floorboard remnant in from the cab into the Crown Vic floorboard is going to work better if the cab is still a little bit lower. I think, as well as the firewall, how that comes together and welds together. I've got some plans to deal with any tire rubbing issues that may develop from sitting this truck body down lower on the frame. So we'll kind of cross that bridge when we come to it. So I've got a little, basically, protractor that I've got sort of clipped together at the angle that I think the C channel needs to come up from the frame and go across for. So as soon as I get the C channel cut, get the pieces cut at the right angles, and we'll tack it together and see how it fits. So here we go. Pretty nice. Nice miter cut. Not bad. So I borrowed this little Harbor Freight bandsaw off a friend of mine, and I have to say that it cuts pretty darn well. As long as you set it up correctly, take the time to get all your settings and everything locked in, it's pretty good. And I think you can pick these things up from Harbor Freight for about $200 or so if you catch them on sale and then use a coupon. And I know I'm sounding a lot like a Harbor Freight commercial, but for tools that my livelihood doesn't depend on, they're hard to beat. So I got my pieces mitered and got the edges cleaned up, and the angles are measuring right where they need to be. And so I just got it clamped to this other piece of C-channel that I've got left over, because I'm not real confident of how flat my garage floor is, or carport. What am I saying? Carport floor is. So I'm just going to tack it together here, and we'll check it one more time and then sit it on the frame and see what we got. All right, flip it over and tack the other side. Oh, yes. That is perfect. Couldn't be any better. I just left a little bit of a lip long. I'm sure if you can kind of see where I left the top part of the thickness of this 3/16 C channel a little bit longer, so it just hangs over the edge of the inside of the frame rail, which has a little bit of a angle to it. You can see on this side. So it'll sit right on top of that. Obviously it's going to be a little farther forward, but the frame width is the same back here. So then I can get a good bead run right across the top as well as the sides and underneath. So I think that's going to be great. What I'm a little bit concerned about is how close that is to my drive shaft, because again it's going to be a little farther forward, a good bit farther forward, and then the drive shaft goes up as you get farther forward. So I've probably got a couple inches, 2.5 inches maybe here right now, but as it goes forward it's going to get closer to like 2 inches or so. So that's going to be pretty close. What I may have to do is actually cut a relief, kind of a semicircular relief in the bottom of this C channel, and then put a plate to strengthen it where I've removed steel underneath on top, and just kind of double that on top, and that'll probably give me a little bit more space. But I think we're going to be good there. I hope we are anyway. We'll see how it goes. So since this is 3/16, I'm using 035 wire. So hopefully I'm using the correct wire and settings. I'm keep playing with my settings a little bit to make sure it looks like I'm getting good penetration. I think the welds are looking pretty good. They are to me anyway, but again, I'm not a professional welder, so hard to say. So I set this cross member in about where I think it's going to end up being, and the drive shaft's probably about an inch away from the bottom of it here. So I scribed a line right where the drive shaft is, and then I've just scribed a semicircle here on both sides, and I'm just gonna cut these out, and then I'm going to weld a piece on the back here, just to basically strengthen what I'm going to cut out of here from these parts here. Okay, so I got that space cut out there. I'm not great with a cutting torch either, but I think that should work. Hopefully it'll give me a little bit more clearance for the drive shaft. Here's the rear cross member, kind of mocked up. Well, not mocked up, but it's just resting on the frame there. And I've got, I'm going to use the Vic body mounts here for that. I notched the C channel for drive shaft clearance, welded a 10-inch piece inverted on the top to strengthen it. I'm going to have to cut those vertical arms off to clear the bottom of the cab as that kind of comes down. It's going to impact that, so I'm going to have to clear that. That's where it looks like right now. I think those body mounts will work well. I'll probably have to replace the bolts, put new bolts in it, but the mounts are still good. Alright, so I think my cross member rear cab mount is pretty much complete. I just cleaned up the relief in the bottom of the C channel that I cut with the cutting torch. Just cleaned that up a little bit, smoothed those edges. Then the side where I kind of welded in the replacement piece, I had to reduce these portions a little bit so they didn't make contact with the cab. So I just cut those down, kind of cleaned it up a little bit. I've got my holes drilled here for my cab mounts, and cab mounts that I'm going to use here are basically just from the rear portion of the body of the Crown Vic, and I've just got that hole drilled large enough to accept this sleeve that kind of goes down through there. So I think that's going to work pretty well. So time to shoot some paint on this thing and call it good. Okay, so cross member's finished. I think it turned out well. Should be plenty strong once I get it welded in here. I think this support here that I welded on the top is going to work fine and clear the bottom of the cab once I get the cab mounts on here. So that's going to be the end of episode 9. Thanks for watching. Next episode 10 is going to be the cab mounting. Woohoo! Well, not mounting. Trimming and getting the cab and everything ready to start thinking about getting it mounted. But it's been kind of on the frame, so pretty exciting. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.